Okay, so while checking over the Bandit, noticed a little bit of drag on the front brakes, not significant, but checking the pads, I can see the wear's fairly uneven, which probably means that the pistons on the inside are dragging just a little. So we're going to strip and clean them. Left and right, both similar situation. Focus there. You know, the pads still got a slight bit of meat in, but we'll clean them, see how they look, maybe get new pads. Handy hint, with these calipers, try and loosen the pad retaining pin whilst you've still got it bolted on, even if the bolts are loose, because it can be a little stiff, and you've got to be careful because these can see. So rather than trying to do it in one thing, just bounce and a little bit of there we go, snug. Now don't take it all the way out, because you see you've got a pin on the back there. I think it's from the factory, it's an R clip, but someone's replaced these with a split pin. That's fine. So pads out. If you're going to be putting the pads back in, just put them on the bench on the side of the caliper that they came out of. Just means when you put them back in, they're still matched to the disc. Obviously some discs as they wear get a little ridged. This one's got a slight bit on the lip, but it feels like it's still within spec. Spec is usually written on the disc somewhere. There we go. Ooh. 4mm. So what you do is you get a micrometer and check the thickness. Now don't check it right at the edge, because that bit's not worn. You want to check in the middle. Bring it in. Wow, this is fiddly. Yeah. Poke it in there. Right. So digital ones are obviously easy to read, but where are we? This one. I'm looking at the wrong side. Right. So that means we are at 1, 2, 3. So we're still at 5mm, so plenty of wear left in that. Right. Handy hint. If you're trying to push the pistons out or take them out to clean them, if you cable tie or however you can hold it in there, put a wrench, spanner, whatever you want to call it, both sides. Then when you pump, the pistons will come out to there. Especially if the pistons are a little seized, because that means you can push them all the way out to that. Yeah, you can see those two are going there. So you see how those are almost touching, and these aren't. So these are obviously dragging a bit more than those. And obviously you don't want to take the pistons out of one side and not have the pistons part way out on the other side, because it just makes it more awkward. Right. You may need to top up the reservoir as you're pushing the pistons out, because you may just run out up the top and then piston's not all the way out on the bottom. You can see these are getting there. A few of them are lagging behind. It's taken quite a bit of pumping up. So I'll keep going. So finally there, but one last thing before taking the calipers off the brake lines, or even splitting the calipers, is do one final last pump on the brake lever, hold it back, and then tie it back. Right, I'll tighten up. I have to turn the camera off. But what that does is if you keep the lever tied back, it will stop the fluid in the reservoir just trickling down the lines and out the bottom whilst you're working on the calipers. I say it just blocks off the hole, and it'll help. Tying the lever back doesn't always work, because sometimes it'll pull air up through the other line and drain out through this line. So make sure you've got just a tub underneath just to collect any little bits. Saves the cleanup afterwards. Alright, so splitting the caliper. You can hold it in a vise. I mean, you don't need to clamp it tight. It's just to stop it spinning and crack off on this caliper. Not all calipers are two-part. Only older ones, newer stuff like Brembo's on the GS6Rs, they're a single piece. R1 calipers, with their gold or silver spots, they're one piece. But if you've got bolts on the outside, so those off. Of course, tubs again, because as you pull it apart, you're going to lose fluid. There it is. And keep an eye out for these little washers here. They're like a, well, it's a bit big. So yeah, you've got a square O-ring, if that makes sense. See that? Got one there. And obviously these, be careful with them, but well, you don't need to take them out, but they obviously seal the two halves of the caliper together. Alright, so hang on. Right, now I'm trying to get out sticky pistons. Now, bought this tool recently because I've always done a different method, but bought a special piston tool and it doesn't seem to work very well. I've tightened it up as much as I can, and whilst it wiggles the piston, it doesn't grip it enough to turn it, and oh, there you go, doesn't hold it well enough. What I've always used is this fantastic tool. It's snap-on, but it's set of geared pliers, so it multiplies the grip by 4 times. Now, you want to be real careful not to grab too far down the piston. You've got, there's the other one. So that dirty line, that bit never goes into the seals. And it's only going past the dust seal to start with anyway. So even if you mark it up a little bit, it's not the end of the world. But so you can just grab right on the very edge, and then just turn and pull, and out it comes. You can see I'm right on the edge there. You can probably do it with regular set of pliers, but I say these snap-on ones are well worth it. I've had these 20 years and they've never let me down. Right, so back at it. After fixing the parts washer, I was able to clean off the caliper a little bit. Popped a couple of the seals out of there. Now, what generally happens is that you've got a dust seal, which is the first seal you come to, quite a thin one. And what happens is you get corrosion in the groove behind this, and it pushes it in and grips onto the piston. Now, here's the second seal, which is, so you've got one seal to keep the dirt out and one seal to keep the brake fluid in. Now, you can see that it's a square. back to those square O-rings. So as you apply the brakes, this seal drags on the piston and gets distorted just slightly off to one side. And it's that, when you release the brakes, that pulls the piston just back in, just that tiny, tiny fraction, so that the pads aren't dragging. Now, generally you don't have to take these out. I just wanted to take it out to show you, because they're usually, protected by the dust seal. Now, in a really bad situation, yeah, you'd want to take them out, but generally they're fine. Once you've got the little seal out, you can use a little, right angle pick, and just go in behind the groove and just clean it out. These are actually pretty clean. And so you've got a second groove there, which is where the square brake fluid seal sits. But yeah, just clean that out. Like I say, sometimes it's pretty gummed up, so you have to scratch it all out. There's an extra little groove in there. You can just see me tapping in and out of it. Again, clean that out. Yeah, and then you're good. So to get the seal out, let's see if I can do it well on camera, is just gently get in, and see if I can hold it still. Oh, really? No, I don't think I can do it. I need 2 hands. Well, I need 3 hands. Wow. Right, yeah, that ain't gonna happen. Okay, using a roll of duct tape as a camera perch, it'll do nicely. So we can say just gently into the edge, just work it just a little bit. There we go. And then just bloop, out it comes. So there, this one hasn't been out. So and you can see on the just see like there's 2 lips. Yeah, I'm going to clean all that out. Yeah, just give them a wipe down and they'll be good. In some bad cases, when the dust seals get corrosion behind them, they can be pushed out and dragged out by the pistons, and you'll see them popping out just out the side. Ideally, you want to replace them because that's damaged them. If you're in a real bind, you can reuse them if you can fit them back into the caliper. Yeah, so these 2, I like to use a bit of white lithium grease, that stuff. Can't remember where I learnt it, but someone said it was good for this sort of stuff. I think it's slightly waterproof, but anyway, get that back in there, squeeze it gently, just feed it into the groove, and push down and come on, there we go, in it goes. Right, another one, slightly bigger. Come on, in you go. Come on, there we go. Just, make sure it all sits in there nicely. Right, and then your pistons. So clean these up. This one's got a little bit of pitting, but that, looking at how far down it is, the piston will be, a bit out anyway, pushing on the pads. Then that's probably about where the dust seal is sitting, and slightly further on will be where the actual fluid seal is sitting. So a little bit of pitting is at this point, it's not too bad, I say, because it's not on the fluid seal. And then I think that, the other one had a little bit, it's all pretty clean. Yeah, So you see that, you just about see that little mark there. Yeah, that is from where I was holding it with the geared pliers. And again, it's only a tiny mark. And again, it's far enough out that it's not going to be rubbing on the seals. So you're good to go. Yeah, I mean, if you're going for perfect, then you'd replace this piston. But on a regular commuter bike, it'll be fine. And then what you do is get it on there and just gently wiggle it just a little bit. There we go. Now don't try and force it, because it will go, at some point it will just give. Come on, there we go. A little wiggle. There we go. Simple. Bigger one. Again, you can see a little bit of corrosion around the edge, but yeah, that's fine. Make sure that seals in. Gently. Wiggle. Come on, in you go. There we go. There we go. Clean. Now to do the other 3 bits. Alright, well, putting the pistons in the first caliper, which I found quite easy. This one's, well, the other half was quite difficult. So I just wanted to give you another. Now that one went quite there we go. Easily. Yeah, it's just because you got to push them down straight, otherwise they catch on the sides. But trying to get it in straight past the seal is, see, that's, come on there, come on. Talking to it does help. Come on, little. Yeah, you see what I was saying? It really doesn't want to. And the seal's in the groove. Come on, there we go. See? And then it suddenly goes smoothly. Okay, so when reassembling the caliper, do not forget the little square seal. And that. Now some calipers just have one seal. These particular ones have 2. So they just sit in there. And sit on the top. And check your manual if you need to torque set it. I'll be using my calibrated mechanics arm. And as if by magic, 2 reassembled calipers. So a couple of things. Your springs in the back. These don't have any markings, but some of them have a little arrow. That's generally direction of disc travel. So in a caliper it'd be pointed upwards. The other thing is copper slip. So these pads have a little metal shim on the back. So you don't really need to do copper slip on the back of the pads. The idea of copper slip back there is to stop them squealing. And if you do put copper slip on the back of the pads, just a light smear. You don't need to layer the stuff on. It just needs to be where the pistons are touching. It's not over the whole thing. So yeah, be prudent. And then the other thing about copper slip, depending on where you live in the world, you'll want to copper slip this bolt. Not a huge amount, just a smear. In the UK, definitely. California, not so much of a need. You know, any way that they salt the roads in winter, copper slip. All right, so calipers all assembled, back on, all bled up. Final thing was to just clean up the front brake lever pivot point. Someone had previously put quite a bit of grease on there, obviously to try and keep it lubed. Problem is, if you put too much grease on, the dirt all sticks to it and eventually works its way in and just gets clogged up. So I mean, it's probably a good thing to do every time you have the calipers off anyway. But it was just causing it to just take a little longer to come back and dragging. So yeah, clean up. Remember, before you try and take out the screw, take off the, I can't see it, 10mm, typically 10mm lock nut on the bottom, right in the middle. There. Before you try and unscrew from the top. And another thing, when you're refilling the master cylinder, if you've got worn pads in, if you're not putting brand new pads in, don't overfill it, because then when you come to put new pads in and you're trying to push the pistons back, the reservoir will be too full, and unless you take the cap off, you won't be able to get the pistons back far enough to put the new pads in. Hope that makes sense. All right, and then what you can do afterwards, just bind it up. I mean, you don't have to crank loads of pressure onto it, but just, cable tie, a bit of tape, just pulling it back, and leave that overnight. And that'll just help any bubbles that are tiny bubbles that are in the brake fluid form into bigger bubbles and float to the top. And then when you release it, you'll just have a much firmer lever. And yeah, that feels pretty good now. Okay, so carbs are done, brakes are done. Last little thing I noticed on this Bandit is the state of the chain. Look at that. Oh, lovely. It's got a Scott oiler on, which has probably saved it from dying completely. And the tension's a little sloppy, but not too bad. Now, obviously, you want to check for tight spots, which I can't do without three hands, but test it at different spots. Spin it round, keep testing it all the way around. If you find a tight spot, if it's really bad, obviously you're going to be looking at a new chain. A really bad tight spot can feel like pulsing as you're at low speeds, as you go over and the chain goes like that because it's getting tighter and looser. If it's only a mild tight spot, you're okay, but you want to make sure that you adjust the chain slack at the tight spot. Rather have the tight spot correct and everything else a little loose than have it too tight. Because what that'll do is it'll stress the chain, it'll stress the sprockets, worst case scenario, it'll stress the output shaft bearing. And if that collapses, that's major work. So just be aware of that. Best things I've found to clean, good old WD, and I think they call them a grunge brush, but Motion Pro do them. There's other ones out there. And basically spray down the chain, front and the back. Spray some onto the bush. Get the bush on the chain. This is quite a big chain, so it's a bit stiffer. And then as you turn the back wheel, just go up and down just to scrub it. All right.